Every college football season needs a narrative. And the new narrative for 2025 has already begun to form. And there it is. Well, there's part of it. Texas is college football's new Alabama. I added the word not because I'm not buying it. I'm flashing the horns down sign on the idea that the Longhorns are going to be the next dynasty in college football. The AP poll likes them. They ranked them number one in the preseason for the first time ever. The coaches poll likes them. They ranked them number one in the preseason for the first time ever. Tells you a little something about the history of Texas football, that this is the first number one ranking the Longhorns have enjoyed in their relatively storied history. I think you could put them on the list of blue bloods. People have been talking about that subject because we're still in talking season. We're not quite there. We're a week away from week 0, 2 weeks away from week 1 that we're going to be especially excited about here in the state of Alabama. Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Skarbinski. This is ScarboKnows, and we have to talk about this narrative, okay? This idea that, well, we know Alabama is no longer Alabama. We know the Saban dynasty is dead. That's not controversial to say. It was a talking point for a long time. When would it end? Every time they got upset or lost a game you thought they shouldn't lose, which was pretty much every game they played, you didn't think they were going to lose going in. And every time they dropped one or they didn't win a national championship, that talking point would be fired up. People would jump on the bandwagon. This is it. It's over. Forget about Bama. Saban's lost it. And usually those narratives were wrong. And now, of course, they're not wrong because he's no longer coaching. He's enjoying his best life after coaching as a member of College Game Day and doing various and sundry other things to make even more money to add to his war chest. So the Alabama dynasty is over. But does that mean that we have to have another dynasty? Does it mean we're going to have another dynasty? Does it mean that someone else is going to take over and be the default number one team when you're filling out rankings, especially in the preseason? Does it mean that when you're predicting national champions or playoff teams, that you're automatically going to pencil Texas into the mix? Well, The Athletic seems to think so. Ralph Russo from The Athletic seems to think so. He wrote an article recently in which he said just that. In short, Texas is becoming the new Alabama. No, that doesn't mean the Longhorns are going to rattle off a half dozen titles in the next decade, but this is the season Texas puts its staying power on display. That's from Ralph Russo, longtime AP college football writer and recently joined The Athletic. And look, I have a lot of respect for Ralph Russo. Known him a long time. He has roots in the South, covering the SEC. And Ralph is one of the more respected voices in college football. But I'm going to tap the brakes. No. I'm not going to tap the brakes on this. I'm going to slam on the brakes. So I hope if you're riding shotgun with me, you're wearing your seatbelt, because otherwise you might go flying through the windshield. I'm putting a stop to this right now. Now, look, I know that Texas has everything you need to be a dominant football program, especially in this NIL revenue sharing era. I know they have the financial backing, the corporate backing, the NIL opportunities in the Austin area for their players that will be attractive to recruits. We've already seen that in the recruiting. Some of the accomplishments we've already seen under Steve Sarkisian, who, of course, like Kirby Smart, learned at the right hand of Nick Saban, saw what a dynasty looks like up close and personal. Sark didn't spend as much time around Saban as Kirby Smart did, but he certainly learned a few things. He also has another great mentor in Pete Carroll, who won a few college football games when he was at USC. And the Trojans were a mini dynasty, if you will, when Carroll had things rolling. Never got to the Nick Saban Alabama level of dynasty, but they were really, really good for a number of years under Carroll. And so Sark, he learned from Pete Carroll, who had a different style, a more loosey-goosey style. Some would say too laissez-faire in a number of ways. Whereas Saban, and it was interesting in the article, you had Steve Sarkisian talking about, in the article in The Athletic by Ralph Russo, you had Steve Sarkisian talking about the difference between Pete Carroll and Nick Saban. And he said with Saban, there was definitely like a fear factor with him. Yes, obviously, we're well aware, especially around here. With Carroll, he said, it was more like, let me hug you. Let's hug it out. Different styles, both were successful. But again, Saban far more successful. So the idea, though, that because Sark learned from Saban, because Texas has all these resources, because they are well positioned to be successful year in and year out in this new era of college football, that they're going to be the new Alabama, I'm not sure how many takers there are on that idea. I mean, look at the AP poll, which Ralph Russo oversaw for a number of years, a long period of time as the college football writer for the Associated Press. Let's look at the top 7 teams in the preseason AP poll. Now, why 7? There are a couple of reasons here. First of all, I shared this with you in an earlier show that in 19 of the last 21 years, pretty good sample size, right? 19 of the last 21 years, the national champion started the season ranked number 7 or higher in the AP poll. So trends, recent history would indicate that the national champion is going to be one of these 7 teams. But I want to hone in not on these 7 teams per se, that those are the teams that the media members who make up the AP poll voters think are going to be the closest teams that are going to come or are going to be in contention for a national championship. Let's put it that way. Most likely to win the national championship. Look at the number next to each team's name. That's the first place votes they received. And it is far from a consensus that Texas is going to win the national championship. A great distance from a consensus. Texas got 25 first place votes. Penn State got 23. Ohio State, the reigning national champion, got 11. Clemson got 4 first place votes. Georgia got 1, and so did Oregon. Notre Dame at number 6 did not get a first place vote. So that tells you that, yes, obviously, Texas is number 1. Again, for the first time in its history, it's number 1 in the preseason AP poll. But we should add a couple of asterisks to that. One is, again, the first place votes were spread out. It's unusual to have that many teams get a first place vote in the preseason poll. And it's the first time in some time that that's happened, that this number of teams, 6 of the top 7, got first place votes. But we should add another asterisk to that as well. And that is Texas hasn't won a national championship since 2005. Ohio State, who you see on that list, they've won a national championship more recently. Clemson, who you see on that list, has won a national championship more recently. 2 of them, in fact, as is true for Ohio State. Georgia, which you see on that list, has won a national championship more recently than Texas. 2 of them, in fact, back-to-back in 2021 and 2022. So while Sark has certainly improved the program, and you can see the progression, this will be his 5th year with the Longhorns. He's gone from 5-7 to 8-5 to 12-2 to 13-3. More wins every season. That's what you want ideally as a coach. Don't do what Terry Bowden did at Auburn. Don't start out 11-0. Don't go undefeated in your first year because you will set a bar that you will not be able to live up to. Even Nick Saban at Alabama went 7-6 in year 1 back in 2007. And then it became a rocket ship that lived at a level that no college football program has lived for as long as Alabama spent there. From 2008 to 2023, what Alabama accomplished had not been done before and won't necessarily and likely will not ever be done again, which is why this narrative that somehow Texas is the new Alabama doesn't ring true with me. And I can reflect back. I've got a little piece of memorabilia back here. Alabama's first national championship under Nick Saban. You see that there? Was in the Rose Bowl, the BCS championship game after the 2009 season. You see a signature up here. Well, wait a minute. Wrong side. You see a signature there. I'll tell you a fun personal story. And I think my sons, Kaiser and Cannon, who are both University of Florida students, go Gators from a family perspective, they were very young at the time. And they would travel with me, as would my wife. Our family would travel on these national championship trips. And we were very fortunate because Alabama or Auburn were in the national championship game virtually every year. So we got to take some nice trips together. But I told my sons, as a member of the media, and I was working full-time for AL.com and the Birmingham News at the time, that I am not allowed to get autographs, to ask for autographs, to assist in the obtaining of autographs. That was unprofessional. I wouldn't do it, not even for my own sons. So I told them, look, guys, now that doesn't stop you from doing it. If you want to, you can go get an autograph. And so every year after the national championship game, the day after, the morning after, the winning coach would appear at a press conference at the media hotel. And I told them, okay, this is the time, this is the place. The rest is up to you. And I'll give them credit. Now, they did it with a little assistance from my wife. But 2009, Nick Saban, they asked, after the press conference, he wandered out into the parking lot. He wasn't surrounded by his typically large entourage. So they got his autograph, and that's one of the footballs. The next year, Gene Chizik and Auburn, same thing. Then the next year, Nick Saban in Alabama, same thing. The next year, Nick Saban in Alabama, same thing. Even Jimbo Fisher in Florida State in 2013 when they beat Auburn. Now, Cannon didn't really care at this point. He's my younger son. Kaiser still wanted to collect these footballs. So he went and asked Jimbo Fisher and got his autograph in 2013, back after they had won it in the Rose Bowl, beating Auburn in just an incredible championship game, an incredible comeback. But I've gotten off track, but that's personally special to me because it's special to my sons. So Texas and Alabama, obviously, they played in that national championship game. Alabama won the game. It was tight for a while. Alabama took an early lead. Texas came back. Not relevant, really, to today's discussion. What is more relevant is Alabama and Texas have played a couple of times. In 2022, Alabama went to Austin and won a nail-biter. Bryce Young had to lead a winning field goal drive late in the game. And then the next year, Sark took the Longhorns back to Tuscaloosa, where he had been a part of that 2020 national championship team at Alabama, Saban's last, as the offensive coordinator. And Texas returned the favor and beat Alabama by 10. So we're not arguing now that at this point in time that Alabama is a better football program than Texas. It's not. Alabama hasn't been in the last two college football playoffs. They didn't make it last year. They lost 4 games last year. They went 9-4. Worst season since 2007. Meanwhile, the Longhorns have been in the last 2 college football playoffs. They were in the semifinals 2 years ago. They lost to Washington, coached by a guy named Kalen DeBoer. Last year, Texas gets in the playoff. They beat Clemson in the first round. They beat Arizona State in another fantastic football game that in some ways the Longhorns were fortunate to escape. And they got back to the semifinals, and then they ran into Ohio State and got beat 28-14. So, yes, Texas 25-5 the last 2 years. Alabama's 21-6. So I will grant you, I will stipulate that Texas right now is a better football program than Alabama today. But that's 2025 Alabama. That's not Alabama from 2008 to 2023. And it's easy to forget. We're such a microwave society. We're all about recency bias. What have you done for me lately? And so, yes, Texas has been more prominent than Alabama in the short run. But let's look at what Alabama actually accomplished under Nick Saban. It's easy to forget. We know they were good. We know they were the best. We know just off the top of our heads, you just know Alabama was the standard. But look at the standard they set. Let's not ever forget these numbers. If you're talking about who's going to be the next Alabama, this is the bar you have to approach. From 2008 to 2023, Alabama won 6 national championships. 3 in the BCS era, 3 in the college football playoff era. 2009, 2011, 2012, the Crystal Footballs. 2015, 2017, 2020, the World Cup looking gold trophy. They also won 9 SEC championships in that span. 9. They played in 11 times in those seasons. They either made it to the BCS championship game or reached the college football playoff. 11. Look at the record against top 10 teams, 36-14. Who was the best team that Texas played last year? Well, you could say it was Ohio State, since they were the national champions. They lost. What's the next best team that Texas played last year? Georgia. How many times did they play Georgia? Twice. What happened in those games? Georgia won both. 30-15 in Austin in the regular season, and then in another white knuckler in the SEC championship game, the Bulldogs prevailed. So against the 3 best teams that Texas played last year, they were 0-3. Or the 2 best teams, I should say, they were 0-3. Alabama under Nick Saban from 2008 to 2023, 36-14 against top 10 teams. How many games did Alabama lose to unranked teams in that stretch? 1. 1. Bonus points if you remember that it was Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M in 2021 that beat Alabama as an unranked team. Alabama lost 3 games to unranked teams in 2007, Saban's first year. They lost 1 after that. 1 in 16 years. Get back to me, Texas, when you do something like that. And 7 times. This is, again, the first year Texas has ever been number 1 in the AP preseason poll. You know how many times Alabama was number 1 in the AP preseason poll under Nick Saban? 7. 7 times they started at number 1. Now, we should add another asterisk. Only once often did. So apologize for those technical difficulties there. As I was saying, of the 7 times Alabama started
And we're waiting for Kevin to rejoin us, but we're Brendan Martin, executive producer here, pick it up as Kevin comes back in, but we're talking about the Bama Standard Heisman Trophy winners from that were 4 as Kevin brings us back in. There we go, Kevin.
The technology gods must be Auburn fans.
That's what
They don't want to see this litany of Alabama accomplishments.
It's a conspiracy, Kevin.
That's got to be. It's got to be. It's the only explanation. But again, the curious thing about how highly regarded Alabama was under Saban, those 7 preseason number 1 nods, only once in those 7 years did Alabama actually finish the season as number 1, as the national champion. So it is not normal. It doesn't happen very often where teams go Forget about wire to wire, because you can have ups and downs. Just starting number one and finishing number one. The last team to do so, Alabama 2017. So that's another strike against Texas doing what people think they're going to do this year. So I just wanted to remind people as we get very near the end of talking season, yes, Texas is poised to have a championship season. Yes, they have a legacy quarterback, a legacy name at quarterback in Arch Manning. A lot of people think he will be on the short list of Heisman contenders, but we don't know. We have to see it to believe it. And they start with as tough a game, as difficult an opener, as challenging an opponent, in as challenging a venue as anyone in the country, because they have to open at Ohio State. And why is no one, here's a question, why is no one suggesting that if there's going to be a new Alabama, and I'm not in that number, I'm not buying that. You got to show me somebody winning at least a few championships in a short period of time to start comparing anyone to Alabama under Nick Saban. But why are we not suggesting that it could be Ohio State? They have been, next to Clemson, the most frequent visitor to the college football playoff since they started the 14 playoff back in 2014. I don't hear stories or read stories or hear podcasts about Ohio State as the new Alabama. But as highly regarded and much respected a journalist as Ralph Russo from The Athletic has written that article and suggested that Texas is the new Alabama, that they're going to have that staying power. There's that quote from Ralph Russo again in that recent story. In short, Texas is becoming the new Alabama. Now he throws a little asterisk in there himself. No, that doesn't mean the Longhorns are going to rattle off a half dozen titles in the next decade, but this is the season Texas puts its staying power on display. Do they? We'll see. And we'll see really early on the first full weekend of college football in 2 weeks when Texas goes to Columbus, Ohio, steps into the horseshoe. What happened the last time that an SEC team that wears the color orange walked into Ohio Stadium? Anyone remember? I think it happened in the college football playoff last year. I think that team also likes to call itself UT. It did not go well for the Volunteers for Tennessee. They got smoked. I'm not suggesting that Texas is going to get run out of the stadium. But I am suggesting if you think that Texas is going to finish the season at number one after starting the season at number one, if you think that Texas is becoming the new Alabama, don't just tap your brakes, slam on your brakes, and let Steve Sarkisian and Arch Manning and company actually win, I don't know, how about one SEC championship? How about one national championship before we start comparing them to the greatest dynasty college football has ever seen? That's all I've got to say on the subject. Talking season is almost over. I'm Kevin Skarbinski. This is ScarboKnows. Check out our sponsor, Money Management Services. You'll be glad you did. Have a great day. See ya.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family, because when you walk through our doors, you become part of ours.